it's true, I did. I started my career as an analyst and then I married into real estate and kind of got abducted and forgot to leave. But look, we've been asked to present not just on AI, but on the strategic adoption of AI. And I think before we kind of open our remarks on the actual technology, it's worth having some kind of common language or a common framework to speak to when we talk about strategy, because it's one of those words that's become really fuzzy, and I hear people say things like, what's a strategy for dinner? And so for me, you can't go past Porter's framework when we look at strategy. And so basically Porter said that whatever business there is, you have to make decisions about how you are going to harness the competitive forces of the market to your advantage. And he said basically there's two ways to do this. You can use a cost reduction strategy, which is where you strip expense out of your business and you do things cheaper. Or you can use a differentiation strategy, which is where you do things better. And you can't have both. You can't have a business like the one that was presented this morning at Compass if you strip the investment out of your innovation pipeline. The third strategy that Porter espouses is a focus strategy, which is where you do one of those two things, but in a very niched way. How's that going for us? How is tech going for us in terms of a current state analysis? Well, the real estate industry currently, the research says that 68% of buyers said that agents had little or no interest in helping them. 48% of buyer inquiries through realestate.com go unanswered. Our proprietary research at AIR tells us that 80% of the property owners that exist in your CRMs have not had a personal engagement with an agent in more than 5 months. In terms of productivity, we know from the Macquarie benchmarking that in 2012, the average number of properties per property manager was 99. And if you think about how much technology we've absorbed in property management between 2012 and 2017, the productivity has lifted only to 101. On top of that, you've got the average agent salary per week at $1,150, working an average of 43.6 hours a week. So no wonder everyone's stressed. We have more tech than ever, we have a decrease in productivity and pretty low customer satisfaction. And that's why AI is so promising. AI and emerging technologies are not like traditional technologies. In fact, we believe that they have the potential to solve a lot of problems that technology may have created. But what is it?
So I have the responsibility of introducing AI. And to get to that point, we need to dispel a couple of myths. We need to reset on our vocabulary a little bit. So what is AI? There's a whole lot of terminology that's used around AI, and really, it's a little bit misleading, and science fiction has done a really good job of misleading us as well. And so let's look at a couple of these terms. Big data. Big data is really just a really massive Excel sheet. There's multiple tabs and they interrelate in some way. That's not AI. Then you've got things like business analytics. It's a little bit what CoreLogic does. It's descriptive statistics. It's pivot tables. It's these kind of nice graphs that describe the information in that big data. That in itself is not AI. Then you've got these things called algorithms, and really that's a nice umbrella for a whole lot of different things, from really simple things to really complex things. And to make it even more confusing, some of the machine learning components of artificial intelligence exist within that banner. And so when people talk about algorithms that are going to change the world, and I've got this kick-ass algorithm and it fails to deliver, chances are it's not AI either. So then we go into and we look at a definition of an algorithm, a process or set of rules to be followed or calculations. A basic algorithm for division is one of those. And so quite simply, that's not AI. And so it gets confusing from here. And so when we go through this, I start looking at things like bots. And we hear about bots. The bots are coming. The bots are going to be really exciting. The bots are going to change the world. And chances are they'll high to promise and low to deliver. And that's because they generally pass the communication down the line. They don't do a lot. They're not very deep. They don't solve too many problems. And a definition of a bot is a device or piece of software that can execute commands and reply to messages. Well, that's not AI either. Although, to make it confusing, there is some bots, a very small percentage, that have machine learning inside them. And so that's not artificial intelligence. So let's land at machine learning. And I'm going to start to talk about artificial intelligence today around machine learning, because this is really where the rubber hits the road. For data scientists like myself and Sarah, machine learning is really where the data informs the learning. It's not somebody sitting there programming it. It's not a rules-based system. It's really where the algorithm gets smarter over time with more interactions. And so then when you land in here, you look at machine learning, and there are two separations in the machine learning. There's general AI and specific AI. General purpose AI does not exist in the commercial world right now. So for data scientists like myself who have machine learning within our programs, it is in the specific space. And the easiest way is to give you an example of what that looks like. So a specific AI is a little bit like a baby learning to crawl. That baby gets better, it gets faster, it interacts with the environment, it goes over carpet, round corners, and pretty soon the baby's following you around the house and can go anywhere. But it doesn't do anything other than crawl. That's specific AI. General purpose AI would be exactly the same thing, only after a certain amount of interactions with the environment, it would stand up, it would take its first step, it would be running around the house, and you'd have trouble containing it within that room. Except for within artificial intelligence, there is this mandate to control it and to put boundaries in place so it only does what you want it to do. And so you have that control, which you don't have over a 2-year-old, if anyone's seen a 2-year-old take off and try and control them. And so I offer you this definition. Artificial intelligence is where machine learning gets smarter, with more interactions without any coding or system change, and where the machine can do tasks or series of tasks quicker and with more accuracy than a human being. So when you talk about AI, where is it all heading? Because there's a lot of misconceptions about where it's heading as well. I believe, and from previous trends in technology, there is going to be this democratization of machine learning, where the big companies like Google, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, and IBM create systems much like they did with the cloud environment, where we could scale our technology really efficiently. They'd also do it in the machine learning space, and they've already started doing that. And the big winners is going to be those big companies. But within our industry and in other industries, you're going to see this breakthrough innovation happening everywhere, where technologists and companies can adopt machine learning to solve really complex problems and solve some conundrums that human beings can't do at scale. And so that's where the breakthrough innovation happens. So if you think technology is fast-paced right now, strap in, because it's going to get really hectic in the next 10 years. And so for you, as business owners, the DNA that you need to have in your business is to be fantastic at change and adopting that change, at adapting to the environment that you operate within. And that's this concept of punctuated equilibrium, where the environment changes so rapidly that a certain percentage of you won't be able to adapt and will become extinct, and a certain percentage of you will use this new environment to your advantage and then will thrive. And that's where it's really going in the next 10 years. So we need to suspend disbelief for a moment. We need to use new thinking to adopt this change. And so I offer you two examples, both within Google DeepMind, which is their machine learning center, and both within the medical industry. So AlphaFold solves the complex folding issue of protein synthesis. It takes 10 years to come up with a new protein in the lab to solve a disease like multiple sclerosis, which is near and dear to my heart because my mother-in-law has it. And what that means for this group is that within a day, 2 days, a week, they can synthesize or at least come up with a model for a protein that could offset that disease and fix it, whereas it used to take 10 years to come up with that model. So we're talking about solving disease in our lifetime because of machine learning. And so it's incredibly exciting to see what's going to happen. The other one is DeepMind Health, and that's where hospital physicians get notified when there's an at-risk patient for something like renal failure. And that renal failure would happen because they couldn't monitor the patient on a moment-by-moment basis. And they get that alert and they can head it off and save lives. Literally thousands of lives every year solved by those alerts, working with physicians for them. And so I believe that artificial intelligence development is a profoundly human pursuit for humans. Thank you.
That's something we share. So when you find yourselves in a lounge room having to explain artificial intelligence in your marketing campaigns to vendors in the future, you can just say that artificial intelligence is when a computer is capable of mimicking a human. So will robots replace real estate agents is something that we get asked every day, and something that we both don't believe will happen. And that's because it comes from this sort of misconception, and I blame automated vehicles. When you take a problem like driving safer, and you consider it in series, so you decide that either a computer or a human will drive the car more safely. When actual fact, if we work in parallel with technology, if the problem that we're solving is safe driving, why can't the computer and the human drive the car together so that we can conflate those capabilities and create a truly safe environment? And so that's why our approach to artificial intelligence is one of collective intelligence, that the best outcomes are achieved when humans and computers work together to be more intelligent than ever before, acting alone. And look, you know, we like to kind of pretend that we have the key to the future and that this is all new, but it's actually, I see it as a trend that's continued since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution when the steam engine was invented. And what we've seen over the last 150 years is the contribution to work by machines increasing and the contribution to work by humans decreasing. Now, we're not in industrial manufacturing, so the steam engine hasn't made, you know, a real impact in our CRMs, except it gives us electricity. But we're knowledge workers. Make no mistake, in the real estate business, you are in the intelligence industry. You take data, you take information, you take market insights, and you interpret those and provide that intelligence to your customers in a process we like to call professional service. And so as knowledge workers, the question I have is, do you want to be the last factory owner to implement the machine? So here's where kind of Patrick and I differ in terms of the strategic adoption or our strategic solutions to real estate. I work primarily with the sales database and growth strategies, and we run a differentiation strategy, whereas Patrick is very much in property management data and works across leadership strategy. And I don't think that we would be any kind of technology speakers if we didn't talk about Uber. I know, groan, eye roll. But I talk about Uber a little bit differently because everyone talks about this company in that it, you know, sought to disrupt private transportation in cities. But here are the facts about Uber. Prior to its IPO, Uber raised $22 billion in 18 rounds of private capital. And if you look at their track record for operating a private transportation business, it hasn't really gone well. So they lost $671 million. 2016, this was a $2.8 billion loss. In 2017, it had grown to a $4.5 billion loss. In March 2018, their self-driving car research actually killed someone. And yet, people still talk about Uber as a private transportation company. Would you invest in Uber if this is the track record? No. In Uber's first public filing in 2019, despite having 91 million users worldwide, they said that they may never make a profit. And yet, there was no issue with Uber's valuation. Why is that? Well, Uber gets to know a lot about your place, your work, your favourite eating joints, shopping destinations, and so Uber has become a big data mine to get all of the information about the domestic economy so that they can mine it for consumption. Now, the cool thing about all of that data is that as real estate agents, you have it. You know the people that live in the domestic economy in your environment. You've been in their lounge rooms. You probably know what colour the tiles are in the bathroom. And the data that you have in the CRM might be worth more than you realise. It's just that we haven't had the tools or the intelligence to really sort through that. And so here's what I mean. This is just looking at some market analytics here. This is a big office. It's a metropolitan office. They have 95,000 contacts in the database, of which 25,000 are clean property owners. This is market data for 1 week across 5 suburbs that we've identified as their core selling area. So what's that worth? They won 4 listings, so that green represents their market share of listings for that week in those 5 suburbs. But the big opportunity there is the 10 lost opportunities. That's where Rita has matched that listings have gone to the market with competitors that match to relationships that already existed in their CRM. So what if we won back just half of that opportunity? The annual yield from that data set in that real estate agency goes from top-line revenue of 2.4 million to 5.4 million in 12 months. Now for rentals, this is listing share for rentals. this is a very large office in Australia. In the month of August alone, Reader identified that there were 163 property owners, properties that they knew in their CRM and their sales data that had gone to the market for rent with competitors. And I think you'll agree that is a prime BDM lead. The property's vacant, it's not earning an income, they've just been through a vacate, probably disgruntled. And so I don't think you'll get 163, but what if a BDM moved on that opportunity and you won just 20% of those each month, every month? Well, the portfolio increases by 384 properties a year. And then the increase in the value of the portfolio is just under $700,000 a year in cash and just under $2 million a year in asset line. So the relationship data that you all have that we knew that we had to collect, and I go to agencies and they collect data like hoarders collect newspapers. They've just got it everywhere but don't know what to do with it. That relationship data, knowing the relationships between the agents and the owners and the properties, is the competitive edge that you will have in the race to relationships. And that's because it's the only thing that makes you, your relationships. We all use the same tools, we have the same messages, right? Great service, great experience, better than everyone else. But the difference really is in you, and the only way that you can differentiate from the bulk email that's the same that everybody else is sending is through virtue of your customer experience. And the problem is if you can't differentiate on you, then you have to differentiate on price. This clicker is problematic. All right, so AI is very different than traditional technology, and I know why we all became the same in terms of this sea of sameness and inability to differentiate. And traditional tech has some flawed assumptions about how humans work and how consumers work. So this is the traditional step 1 to 10 journey that exists in the software CRM. It's a checklist. Someone looks at the house, they buy the house, they live in the house, and so forth. But what happens if they look at the house and they don't buy the house? I'll tell you what happens. They get tagged in the CRM as a current buyer, and they sit in that vortex of darkness forever because they didn't match that particular step 1 to 10 linear journey that's very, very simple. My dad was a military strategist, and this is one of my favourite quotes of his. He said, the thing about plans is that they're generally the map, and that's very different than the territory. So it got me thinking, if so many people were missing that 1 to 10 checklist straight customer journey line, how many other possibilities existed? So let's assume that there are only these 10 steps, and I do think that's super unhelpful because I do think people have different requests from us. So let's pretend that someone wanted a customer journey through those 10 milestones and that an agent checked in every 90 days for 5 years. Here's the math, I'm sorry, and I just wanted you to make sure you didn't think Patrick was a smart one. So there are 10,015,005 different combinations that a customer could have just through those 10 different requests. But if they fail at step 1 and they don't buy the house, then they just get lost to us. And to put you, so the next time someone tells you that real estate customer experience isn't rocket science, you send them to me. But to put it into perspective, there are only 8 million combinations in a lotto game with 45 number and 6 winning ones. So that traditional, linear, simple customer journey, you've got more chance winning lotto than delivering a hyper-personalised customer experience in real estate. A differentiation strategy would leverage AI to predict the customer journey, and the thing about computers and how fast they can process information is that you've got the ability to manage billions of different customer experiences in parallel, all at the same time. Right, very quickly, the next thing I see is that the only other kind of lever that you can pull is time. So the traditional kind of agent workflow is that a customer engages, and then day 3 we follow up, day 15 we follow up, day 23 we follow up. And I've analysed over 2,000 agent CRMs now, and there's very, very few that don't have Agent Jones has 400 overdue tasks. Now, the traditional wisdom is that agents are unmotivated, they don't hustle enough or get up early enough in the morning. But the reality is that agents are just are just human, and we've fundamentally missed the way that humans do interact with technology and each other. So humans are anachronistic. We don't deal in time, we deal in story. It is weird to call someone for no reason other than the fact that 7 days have passed since you last spoke to them. Humans are considerate. You know, we're told that people don't make phone calls or don't connect with customers because they fear failure. But actually, it's the fear of interruption. We don't like to intrude people when we don't have a purpose. Humans avoid pain. When you don't have a purpose for the phone call and you're embarrassed and they're going to be embarrassed and it's going to be awkward, we actually just avoid that task, and then we settle into habits, train into habits, and then we continue to avoid that task. The cure for this is context. So having the right conversation in front of the right person at the right time for the right reason is what artificial intelligence, and particularly machine learning, can do to provide a humanised and truly relevant customer experience at scale. I'm going to skip through this. One of the ways that we do that is through networking data and working through it. So if you look at the data that exists in your business, for example, Pricefinder, the CRM data, or realestate.com, they answer very different, very specific questions. But when we network the data and we process it using algorithms and machine learning, they work a little bit like a recipe, and we can suddenly ask a much better question, much more complex question, to get a much better lead. And that's what My Baby does. AI, when you use data for personalised communication with your database, this is what not to do. And I get this all the time. An email from the real world. Hi, Sarah. Can you scrape LinkedIn and find everyone I went to high school with and find out where they live now so I can see if they want to sell their property, love an agent? And I respond all the time, hi agent, potentially, but don't do that unless you are especially and objectively very good looking. Because the reality is you will look like this if you don't have the appropriate social license and relationship to just come out of the blue and ask someone about the personal circumstances that trigger a real estate transaction. Someone explained personalisation and data to me brilliantly like this. The difference between a romantic and a stalker is how good looking they are. And so I'll leave you with this useful test for adopting artificial intelligence for personalisation and differentiation. Have I been invited to use this data or information called consent, and is this valuable? All right. Welcome back, Patrick.
Thanks, Sarah. Can I get a time check, Barney? 15 minutes. Okay,
We're right
fantastic.
on time.
You're right on time. Okay, so the question that we have left for my world is, will robots replace property managers? And we get asked this all the time, just like Sarah does. And the short answer is no, but it will influence the landscape in which you operate within. And so the landscape in your environment looks a little bit like this. There are 5 generations renting and investing in real estate in the next couple of years. They have very different communication strategies. They want to engage you in email, SMS, Facebook, and voice, and a whole lot of new ones that are coming out. And that engagement means that for the downward pressure on the transactions that happen within your business for your property managers is going to be immense. And they will be incredibly inconsiderate. That is, that instant coffee is too slow, and big companies are setting this expectation. They'll expect you to respond straight away. So many times property managers say to me, I went out to lunch for a birthday and I got back an hour later or 45 minutes later and I had 35 emails and 3 of them were the same person. They wanted it answered right now. And that's a growing trend. And so instant coffee is too slow, and traditional communication mediums are an impediment to that communication. And so when we looked at what property managers were doing, we had this time analysis that happened across maintenance and rental inquiries and appraisals and all the way around the wheel. And if I looked at a busy organisation that was having 130 properties being managed within their portfolio, that's 220 workdays, they had 23,000 plus emails inbound in a given year. I didn't believe it when I first heard it. I went back and investigated. It was 23,000. Now, some of those, a percentage, they could have just straight deleted. But that's an inordinate amount of communication pieces for a single property manager. That's 106 emails a day, 35 text messages, and inbound phone calls of 30 a day. Where's the time to do the job if you're responding to communications? How do you do it with quality? How do you stand out in your marketplace? How do you look different than just a transactional manager? And so when we move on from that, there's 14,000 plus property managers in Australia, according to ABS. And if you multiply that out, that's 108 million SMSs, 329 million emails, and 92 million phone calls that your industry in this country fields every year. It's a phenomenal amount of work. Take your property managers out for dinner or lunch. They deserve it. They work hard. I couldn't do it. And so when I look at that, I go, well, what fell through the cracks? Because there's definitely something falling through the cracks. It's a game of triage. What am I letting go today so that I can get to the noisy part, so that I can get through my day? And so the question for you as business owners is that if you're going to have a one-to-many conversation, which is your communication strategy, and you can talk across multiple devices because that's what your customer wants, then it has to be meaningful and reliable and of quality. It has to be immediate and accessible. It has to be scalable. That is, you can have 5,000 people in your rent roll, you can have 300, it doesn't matter. You can have 3 property managers or 35. You have to serve where your customer wants to be served, and it has to be 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's the expectation. And so when you look at that, I ask the question, what's your communication strategy to obtain competitive advantage to stand out? And in my previous slides, I talked about whether you're going to be the agency that thrives in the new environment or you're extinct. Ask yourself this question. Is my most valuable asset besides my human beings in my organisation, which is your data, sitting in a server under the stairs that you have to shut down 8 times a day just to back it up? Because if you are, you've got to look really hard at your strategy moving forward. You need to rip the Band-Aid off. And I don't mean go to a cloud-based software. Go to a cloud-based software that has an open API, a true open API, and there's only 2 in Australia that do it. So don't just get through the day. When we looked at this industry, we said a communication strategy for this industry involved us using machine learning to free property managers from overwork. It's a human endeavour. And so when we looked at that, we wanted business owners to move their business from transactional management to customer relationship management and growth. And the only way you do that is to have human connections where you free up your humans to have those conversations. And so today I'd like to introduce Claire to you. Claire is the artificial intelligence that we built for property management. It's effectively a virtual assistant for property managers. And Claire can do many things. Claire can solve many problems. She has 50 skills currently. When we launched 4 months ago, she had 10 skills. She worked on Google Home and Google Assistant only. And in the Australian market, there are 5.7 million smart devices and 10 million mobile phones on Android. That's about 15 million devices in which Claire could operate on and have a conversation with your tenants. And so out of those 50 skills, we launched it onto Claire onto Google. And at 1 a.m. on Saturday night, imagine this happening.
Hey Google, talk to Property Realm.
All right, here's Property Realm. Welcome to Property Realm. You're speaking with Claire. How can I help you?
My toilet's overflowing. I need a plumber.
Is this an emergency repair?
Yes, it is. I need someone right away.
All right then, to get the right person to fix this, I need lots of details about the problem, like what room, how severe it is, or any other details you think are relevant.
It's the toilet in the second bathroom. Water is just gushing out everywhere. It's damaging the carpet. I need a plumber right now.
Oh no, the plumber can be contacted on 0466666666. Please be aware that if it is not urgent or is damage caused by you, then you will need to pay the call-out fee. Would you like me to contact the emergency plumber for you?
Yes, please.
Done. I have forwarded your contact details to the plumber. If you need to follow up, you can call Frank Pipes and I forwarded these details to you. Is there anything else I can do for you?
No thanks, not at the moment.
Okay, see you later. Don't forget you can ask me about your next rental inspection. Bye for now.
And so if we look at that just quickly, there was immediate service. There was easy access to an outcome. It was the shortest path and it solved the problem. And if you look at Claire's work log there, with multiple things that she did within 30, 45 seconds, it was everything from confirm the tenant to add a job to the property management software and assign a plumber to the job. And on Monday morning, when the property manager gets in and sees that and the job's already been completed and they can update it in their system and it's already been updated by Claire that it's happened, now you've got automation that has a real impact to the workload of your staff. And so if I move on and you ask the question, is Claire SMS capable? 2 months ago we added SMS, and so you can advertise a concierge service to your tenants where you can sit there and say, contact this person day or night on this SMS, and our system will respond with a solution. And out of those 50 skills, they all happen on SMS. And one thing that I'd like to show you here is rental arrears, because this is a bugbear of a lot of agencies that we speak to. How do we deal with rental arrears? It's a difficult conversation. We don't necessarily want to have it, but a lot of the solutions out there are a notification, not a conversation. So let's have a look at that just very quickly. So Claire monitors your property management software, one of your biggest software investments. It understands when a rental arrears is happening based on a threshold of 3, 6, 9 days, whatever you set. It sends out an SMS to the person asking a question, when will you be able to pay this? They're asked in the conversation to respond. They respond to that, and they could respond in one of 4 ways. Yes, I've paid it, I'm paying it today, I'll pay it next week, or I can't pay it, or something like that. And Claire can have an ongoing conversation with them until it's resolved. And then it updates the property manager when there's an issue or when it needs to be escalated. Claire also sends the property manager and their manager a report which shows the activity, what happened. It updates the property management software and makes sure it's all happening perfectly. So it resolves it in live time through a conversation. And so if we move on for a second out of SMS, there's 3.9 billion emails worldwide and 293 billion emails a day. In Australia, we estimate 1 million property management emails inbound only per day that is handled by this industry. It's a huge time waster. And then you have to move out of that system to a new system and you have to respond to those emails. So when we look at that, we wanted artificial intelligence and humans to clear the inbox with unparalleled efficiency and accuracy and purpose. And so in the office, we said, let's reimagine email for property managers. And so when we looked at that, we had this concept of autonomous and semi-autonomous and in series and in parallel, but really what that means is self-determination. The human being should be in control of what happens or doesn't happen within an AI framework. And so within our system, they get to choose. So if we have a look at that really quickly, as soon as an email enters into your inbox, Claire picks it up, processes it, understands it, separates it into different paragraphs so it can be responded to, looks up the property management software and maps it to a tenant. So now within the email inbox, we know which tenant it's about. There's no third-party system you have to go to. Then it understands the sentiment of the actual inbox. So for all open emails, there are 3 angry and 14 happy. For every email, you can see whether it's an angry email or a happy email before you go into the actual email. And from there, you can see the topics of the email that were identified. Was it a plumber? Was it a handyman? Was it a pet? So there's no inbox surprises, which means less stress, which means the psychological health of your staff is improved. The status is what Claire could answer on her own. So you know how much work you have to do to close out that email. Then you can go in and take the action to actually edit it, review it, release it, or reject it. And when you go into that, knowing that the inbox is under control, you can have a look at the individual email and you can see at the top right-hand side when it arrived, if you've responded, and whether it's a happy or angry email. You can see what it's about via the tags on the left-hand side at a glance, and you can see the response in which Claire has come up with out of your property management software. So let's edit one. We go in, and you've already got something that's not processed, and you can see it there. There it's an angry part because you can see the sentiment, and Claire needs human beings to take care of the emotional side to the email because it's not appropriate for her to do that. And so you can go in there and do that, and the other 2 things in which they've asked about have already been answered by Claire out of the 50 things that it can do. And so then you release it and send it within seconds. This one here is 100% answered. It's a pet inquiry, and you can just release that one straight out the door. Nothing to do. And in the meantime, all of these things are being updated into your property management software. And if it's, let's say, a maintenance job, there's a job added. If there's a task to do like a move-out workflow, it adds the task to do the move-out part. And so everything's connected end-to-end by AI. And so Claire looks up and answers all the correct details, the specific details. This one's a rental inquiry, how much do I owe? And forms a nice sentence to send out. And so now your inbox is automated in a very real way. So that's email for property managers within this industry. And if I skip forward, because I can see that I'm out of time, what that means for you is 720 hours per property manager per year, or 90 days. That's 4.5 months given back to you within your property management practice. per property manager. And that number's growing every month. Thanks for having me. Cheers.
Guys, so absolutely awesome. What's interesting, Sarah, I love the distinction, the personalisation versus privacy that you shared. So if you don't have permission, then what are you doing actually in there? And also, is this valuable? So how do you actually add the value in the process? Fantastic. And then Patrick, you have collated the shed load of literally work that's being done on the property management side, and it's sort of no wonder that the property managers are in overwhelm. And then the second thing is that there is delivery issues, and so often with those, there's the three calls, because I haven't got the response on the first one, and every call, the client's getting more and more anxious about whatever that particular issue is along those lines. I love the fact that when we saw this back in June, there were about 10 functions, and now you've got 50 functions. How fast is Claire going to learn, and how did you decide on Claire?
CLARE stands for Communication Language Artificial Intelligence for Real Estate.
It had to be something sexy, didn't it? Let's give these guys a round of applause. Just absolutely awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.